I'm Helen, and last month, my beloved great-aunt Evelyn, a passionate jewelry collector, passed away. She bequeathed me her antique jewel collection, each piece with a unique story. When I opened the vault, I found the genuine jewels replaced with crudely made replicas. A note from my cousin Valerie read, "I merely reinterpreted them." True art is subjective, don't you agree? I was left with worthless fakes and a burning desire for the real thing. This story unravels a shocking act of betrayal, the deliberate desecration of a precious legacy, and the fight to reclaim not just jewels, but truth itself. If you've ever discovered a hidden deception or had to battle for what truly matters, then hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next explores the depths of deceit and the enduring brilliance of justice. My great-aunt Evelyn was a woman who spoke the language of stories, particularly those whispered by antique jewels. Her home, a charming Victorian house nestled in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, wasn't just a dwelling. It was a living museum of her life's passion. Every room, from the sun-drenched parlor to the hushed study, held meticulously arranged display cases. These weren't ostentatious, glittering showcases, but rather thoughtfully curated tableaus, each presenting a subset of her unparalleled collection of antique jewelry. From the somber elegance of Georgian mourning rings to the vibrant geometry of Art Deco brooches. Each piece had been painstakingly researched, lovingly acquired, and imbued with Evelyn's profound appreciation for history, craftsmanship, and the human narratives they carried. Evelyn, with her keen eye and graceful, slender fingers, had taught me, Helen, from a young age, how to discern the genuine from the imitation. She'd hold a diamond up to the light, patiently explaining the subtle gleam of a true stone versus the flat sparkle of zirconia, demonstrating the reassuring weight of authentic gold, or pointing out the unique, unreplicable patina of age on a silver filigree. More importantly, she instilled in me the profound understanding that a jewel's true worth lay not in its market value, but in the story it carried, the lives it had touched across centuries, the eras it had witnessed. Evelyn saw beyond the glitter to the soul of the object. She was the quiet guardian of forgotten histories, and she fostered in me a similar reverence for beauty rooted in truth. When Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep last month, at the grand age of 90, the world felt a little less brilliant, a little less rich in history. I felt her absence acutely, a profound stillness where her vibrant spirit had always been. I had cherished our weekly tea sessions, where she would share a new discovery, a particularly fascinating provenance, or simply a life lesson disguised as a tale about a forgotten queen's emerald. The reading of her will was as unpretentious as Evelyn herself. Her longtime solicitor, Mr. Caldwell, a man whose kindness was as evident as his sharp legal mind, convened us in his small, wood-paneled office. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the lingering perfume of wilting funeral flowers. Evelyn's will was astonishingly simple and direct. After a few minor bequests to charities she admired, the entirety of her antique jewel collection, valued by independent appraisers at several $1 million, along with the Victorian house itself, was bequeathed solely to me. To Helen, Mr. Caldwell read, his voice clear and resonant, his spectacles perched on the end of his nose, who alone shares my discernment and my respect for the history and artistry embodied within these precious pieces. It is my deepest wish that she continues to care for them, not as mere possessions, but as guardians of history, to be cherished, and perhaps, in time, shared with future generations who understand their true worth. A hushed silence fell over the small gathering, punctuated only by the distant hum of city traffic. My cousin, Valerie, sat across from me, radiating an aura of polished disdain. She was a woman who always looked meticulously put together, her designer clothes and perfectly sculpted hair betraying not a single flaw. But beneath that flawless exterior simmered a restless ambition and a profound materialism. Valerie, the daughter of Evelyn's estranged sister, had always viewed Evelyn's passion for antiques as an eccentric obsession, a bizarre hobby that kept her from realizing her assets. Valerie, driven by a relentless pursuit of superficial wealth and status, had periodically attempted to advise Evelyn on how to monetize her collection, suggesting selling it off in bulk to pawn shops, liquidating it for cash, or turning the house into a gaudy bed and breakfast. Evelyn had always dismissed her with a polite but firm smile, simply stating, "Some things are not for sale, Valerie. Their value lies beyond currency." When Mr. Caldwell finished reading my name as the sole inheritor of the jewels, Valerie's carefully composed expression fractured. Her eyes, usually cool and calculating, blazed with a raw, ugly envy that made her beautiful features twist into something almost unrecognizable. "This is preposterous," she hissed, her voice cutting through the peaceful afternoon air like a shard of ice. Jewelry, to her? What a wasteful, sentimental old fool. I am her direct blood relative. I should have inherited everything. This entire collection is probably just old junk she picked up at estate sales." Mr. Caldwell simply adjusted his spectacles, unmoved by her outburst, his gaze unwavering as he stared her down. I left the office with a mix of profound gratitude and a creeping sense of unease, a premonition that Valerie's avarice would not be so easily dismissed. Her final, chilling glare as I exited the building lingered in my mind, a cold promise of trouble to come. 2 days later, still reeling from the funeral and the unexpected, overwhelming gift of Evelyn's trust, I drove to the house. The grand, wrought-iron gates, usually standing open in Evelyn's welcoming way, were slightly ajar. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. The meticulously pruned rose bushes, Evelyn's pride and joy, seemed to droop mournfully under a sky that had turned an ominous gray. A sense of wrongness permeated the air. The front door, usually secured with an old-fashioned skeleton key that Evelyn had entrusted to me months ago, was not only unlocked, but stood ajar, a sliver of darkness visible within. Hesitantly, I pushed it open further, the silence within louder than any sound. The house was exactly as Evelyn had left it, the air still carrying the faint scent of lavender, beeswax polish, and old books. No obvious signs of forced entry, no shattered glass. It was too quiet, too undisturbed, in a way that screamed of something amiss. My heart pounded against my ribs as I cautiously moved through the familiar rooms, my eyes darting, searching for any sign of disturbance. Everything seemed to be in its place, the antique furniture gleaming softly, the curtains drawn just so. But as I stepped into the main drawing room, where Evelyn's most treasured pieces were displayed, my eyes immediately darted to the large, custom-built display vault. It was a formidable structure, built into the wall, its heavy, ornate door usually kept locked with a complex numerical code only Evelyn knew. Now, it swung open, yawning darkly like a hungry maw. My breath caught in my throat. My hands flew to my mouth to stifle a gasp. The velvet-lined trays within the vault were indeed filled, just as they should be, with rings, necklaces, brooches, and tiaras. But something was terribly, terribly wrong. The familiar, deep gleam of genuine gold was replaced by a dull, brassy sheen that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The unique fire and scintillation of authentic diamonds were gone, replaced by the flat, lifeless sparkle of cubic zirconia, catching the light in a crude, almost mocking way. The intricate hand engravings I knew so well, Evelyn's subtle tests for authenticity, were crudely etched, the gemstones clumsily set, some even slightly crooked. My heart plummeted, cold and heavy as lead, landing with a sickening thud in the pit of my stomach. These were not Evelyn's jewels. These were crude, cheap replicas. A wave of nausea washed over me, a dizzying mix of disbelief and burgeoning horror. It was as if Valerie hadn't just stolen the jewels, but had also tried to erase Evelyn's very discerning eye, her unwavering commitment to authenticity, by leaving behind such a grotesque parody. Lying on the top velvet tray, placed with deliberate, mocking precision, was a small, cream-colored note, folded neatly. My hands trembled as I picked it up, my fingers brushing against the expensive, faintly perfumed paper. Valerie's elegant, looping script covered the paper. I merely reinterpreted them. True art is subjective, don't you agree? My vision blurred with tears of disbelief and a surging, furious rage that felt hot and metallic in my throat. The jewels were not stolen in the traditional sense. They had been replaced, defiled, twisted into a cruel parody of Evelyn's legacy, leaving me with worthless fakes and a burning desire for the real thing. It was an act so calculated, so dismissive of Evelyn's soul, that it felt like a second, more insidious death. The initial shock of discovering the fake jewels quickly morphed into a searing indignation, a fire in my gut that burned away the grief. Valerie's audacity, her sneering note, revealed a level of contempt for Evelyn's legacy that went beyond mere greed. This wasn't just theft. It was a deliberate act of artistic mockery, an intellectual insult to Evelyn's passion and expertise. It was as if Valerie believed she could erase Evelyn's discerning eye, her unwavering commitment to authenticity, by replacing genuine beauty with cheap imitation. My hands trembled as I carefully lifted one of the crude replicas, a supposed diamond Riviere necklace. Its lightweight feel and cheap sparkle a stark, nauseating betrayal of the genuine article I knew. How could someone be so callous, so utterly devoid of respect for another's life's work? I immediately contacted Mr. Caldwell, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and despair as I described the scene. The open vault, the crude fakes, Valerie's taunting note. His usually calm, measured demeanor dissolved into a tightly controlled fury. "Helen," he stated, his voice tight with suppressed anger, "this is beyond malicious. This isn't simple theft. It's an elaborate scheme designed to confuse and devalue the collection while profiting from the genuine articles. It speaks to a level of calculated malice that is truly disturbing." He warned me that proving the existence and value of items that had been subtly swapped for fakes would be a complex legal challenge. The burden of proof will be on us to demonstrate that these pieces were indeed replaced, to authenticate the originals, and to establish their worth. Valerie will undoubtedly claim these are the jewels Evelyn possessed, or that Evelyn herself made the switch in a moment of senility, no doubt fabricating some elaborate story of creative expression, or reimagining her collection. Despite the daunting prospect, Mr. Caldwell assured me that Evelyn, always a pragmatist despite her artistic soul, had anticipated potential challenges. Evelyn was not naive, Helen, he explained. She understood the world, and she understood avarice. She discreetly invested in a robust legal fund, specifically earmarked for the protection of her collection's integrity and provenance, should it ever be challenged or compromised. It was a testament to her incredible foresight, her unwavering trust in me, and her quiet understanding of Valerie's character. This knowledge, that Evelyn had provided me with the means to fight, fueled my resolve. My first task was to meticulously document every single piece Valerie had left behind in the vault. I spent days, a magnifying glass in hand, comparing each crudely made replica to Evelyn's extensive collection of photographs, appraisal documents, and handwritten notes. Evelyn had kept incredibly detailed records, often sketching minute details of unique flaws, specific settings, or even the precise angle of a facet on a particular gemstone. It was heartbreaking work, seeing the crude copies where masterpieces once lay. Each fake was a physical manifestation of Valerie's disrespect, a hollow echo of Evelyn's passion. I photographed the fakes from every conceivable angle, noting their shoddy craftsmanship, their incorrect weights, the telltale signs of cheap mass production, the clumsy settings, the dull sparkle. It felt like an archaeological dig, unearthing the truth from beneath layers of deceit and disrespect. The house, once a comforting sanctuary filled with Evelyn's spirit, now felt tainted, a crime scene where beauty and truth had been violated. I reached out to two of Evelyn's closest professional confidants, individuals she had entrusted implicitly with her collection over the decades. The first was Dr. Eris Thorne, a renowned gemologist with a reputation for uncompromising integrity, who had appraised Evelyn's entire collection for decades. His voice, usually calm and academic, trembled with indignation when I explained what had happened. Evelyn's collection was legendary, Helen, he insisted, a note of personal offense in his tone. Every single piece was authenticated, documented, beyond reproach. This reinterpretation is an insult to genuine artistry and a blatant act of fraud. I can easily identify the fakes. Their chemical composition and structural flaws will betray them beyond any doubt. The second was Madame Elise Dubois, a venerable antique jewelry dealer who had both bought from and sold to Evelyn for over 50 years. Madame Dubois, a woman of formidable reputation within the rarefied world of haute jewelry, echoed his sentiments with a quiet, burning fury. Evelyn had an unparalleled eye, ma chérie, to replace her treasures with such cheap, grotesque copies. It is the act of a Philistine, a barbarian. I know many of those pieces personally. They are irreplaceable, each a miniature monument to an age. Their collective outrage solidified my resolve, giving me a much-needed glimmer of hope that I wasn't fighting this daunting battle alone. Their expert testimonies, combined with Dr. Thorne's scientific authentication of the fakes, would be absolutely crucial in exposing Valerie's brazen deceit and establishing the true, colossal value of what had been stolen. The fight ahead promised to be arduous, navigating a labyrinth of complex legalities and profound emotional turmoil. But with their unwavering support, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to restore Evelyn's legacy from the shadows Valerie had cast upon it. This wasn't just about jewels. It was about honoring Evelyn's truth. With Mr. Caldwell orchestrating our formidable legal strategy, the initial legal salvo was launched, a formal notice of intent to sue, detailing the theft and fraudulent replacement of Evelyn's collection, was hand-delivered to Valerie's luxurious city apartment. Her response, as predictable as it was infuriating, came swiftly through her own attorney, a notoriously aggressive and ethically flexible litigator named Julian Blackwood. Blackwood's letter was a masterclass in legal obfuscation and dismissive arrogance. He casually dismissed our claims as baseless and fantastical accusations, implying that Evelyn, in her declining years, might have been confused about her collection, or that the true value of the jewels was merely sentimental and therefore unquantifiable in any material sense. He even brazenly hinted that I, Helen, might be fabricating the entire story for personal gain. A desperate attempt to discredit me and muddy the waters before the truth could even be properly aired. Your client, Miss Mitchell, his letter sneered, is engaging in a desperate, last-ditch effort to extract a fortune from a collection of largely unremarkable trinkets, whose alleged originality cannot possibly be proven in the physical absence of these fantastical pieces. This is a frivolous lawsuit, and we will move to have it dismissed. The sheer audacity of her lies, echoing through Blackwood's dismissive words, was a constant infuriant. But Mr. Caldwell simply gave a grim, knowing smile. Standard tactics, Helen. They'll try to wear us down, exhaust our resources, and make us doubt ourselves. But we have the truth on our side, and that's a currency they can't counterfeit. Our next crucial step was to delve deep into Valerie's past, to unearth the underlying motive behind such a calculated, cruel, and ultimately self-destructive act. Mr. Caldwell had a strong hunch that Valerie's actions weren't merely opportunistic, but driven by a deeper, more desperate need. Perhaps even a sense of entitled desperation. He engaged a discreet, highly skilled private investigator. The investigator's findings, gleaned from public records, financial filings, and subtle inquiries within Valerie's social and professional circles, painted a stark and rapidly deteriorating picture of Valerie's life. One of glittering appearances, masking a crumbling foundation of debt and spectacular financial failure. Her successful career as an art consultant was, in reality, a string of ill-fated ventures and spectacularly bad investments. A high-end gallery she'd managed had abruptly closed amidst accusations of mismanaged funds and questionable provenance of the art she handled. A series of speculative investments in dubious overseas properties had vanished into thin air, leaving her with massive, undeclared losses. It became horrifyingly clear that Valerie wasn't just financially struggling. She was living on the precipice of immediate, crushing bankruptcy, trapped in a gilded cage of her own making. Desperate to maintain a facade of wealth and success she no longer possessed. Every designer outfit, every expensive dinner, every lavish party she attended was merely another layer of an increasingly unsustainable charade. I recalled Evelyn's quiet observations about Valerie's relentless materialism, her dismissive attitude towards anything that couldn't be immediately monetized or showcased as a status symbol. Valerie sees value only in what can be bought and sold, Helen, Evelyn had once mused, carefully polishing a moonstone pendant that shimmered with an inner light. She understands price, but not worth. She would never appreciate the quiet history held within these jewels. It clicked into place with chilling clarity. Valerie hadn't merely stolen the jewels, she had replaced them. A bizarre, theatrical performance intended to obscure her crime, to buy time, and to perhaps even convince herself that her reinterpretation was a legitimate artistic act, rather than a blatant felony. When Evelyn left the collection to me, it wasn't just a financial blow to Valerie. It was a profound personal affront, a public declaration that Evelyn trusted my artistic sensibilities and integrity over Valerie's, grasping materialism and superficiality. The destruction of the authentic jewels, replaced by soulless fakes, was Valerie's desperate, twisted attempt to seize control, to prove her superior, understanding of value by turning priceless history into mere commodities, easily liquidated to fuel her unsustainable lifestyle. Armed with Dr. Thorne's comprehensive scientific analysis, confirming the fakes, Madame Dubois' expert appraisals valuing the original collection, and now the damning evidence of Valerie's catastrophic financial ruin, Our case began to solidify into an ironclad indictment. Mr. Caldwell worked tirelessly, his office littered with documents, preparing detailed exhibits of Evelyn's meticulous documentation, comparing them against the shoddy replicas. We even uncovered a desperate, high-interest loan application Valerie had submitted just weeks before Evelyn's death, citing anticipated inheritance as collateral, a clear indicator of her predatory intent and premeditation. The motive wasn't just envy or resentment. It was a desperate, all-consuming need for money, masked by a flimsy veneer of artistic interpretation that was as hollow and false as the jewels Valerie had left in their place. The legal battle ahead promised to be arduous, prolonged by Blackwood's delaying tactics. But with this undeniable mounting mountain of evidence, the truth, shining brighter than any diamond, was undeniably on our side. Valerie's false gleam would soon be exposed. The initial court proceedings felt less like a measured legal process and more like a high-stakes, tightly choreographed drama. The courtroom, usually a bastion of hushed formality, crackled with an almost palpable tension as the legal battle truly began to burn. Valerie, impeccably dressed and accompanied by Julian Blackwood, maintained an icy, almost theatrical composure, her demeanor a stark contrast to my own churning anxiety and raw emotional honesty. Blackwood, true to his reputation, wasted no time in attempting to portray me, Helen, as an opportunistic, perhaps even delusional, young woman misled by an eccentric old aunt. He argued that the concept of antique jewelry was subjective, its value easily inflated by sentimental attachment, and that Evelyn, in her presumed senility, might have herself acquired less valuable pieces, implying the fakes were simply what Evelyn actually owned. "Your Honor," Blackwood declared, addressing the stern-faced Judge Alina Grant, a woman known for her keen intellect and no-nonsense approach. "My client, Miss Valerie Hayes, has simply been framed by a greedy relative seeking to extract a fortune from a collection of largely unremarkable baubles, whose alleged originality cannot be proven in the physical absence of these fantastical pieces. This is pure fabrication, Your Honor, an attempt at a baseless land grab." Mr. Caldwell, however, was more than prepared. He countered with precision and a quiet authority that commanded attention. "Your Honor," he began, his voice calm but firm, "the claim that Evelyn Mitchell, a world-renowned authority on antique jewelry, a woman whose discerning eye was sought by international museums and private collectors alike, would amass a collection of unremarkable baubles is an affront to her legacy and an insult to the court's intelligence. We are prepared to present not only detailed appraisals by certified gemologists, but also extensive photographic evidence, meticulously researched provenance documents stretching back centuries, and the explicit, unimpeachable testimony of a leading antique jewelry dealer, all of which will irrefutably confirm the authenticity and immense value of the original collection. Furthermore, we will demonstrate, with irrefutable scientific analysis, that the items currently in Miss Mitchell's vault are indeed crudely manufactured replicas, placed there as part of a deliberate and fraudulent scheme. At the mention of fraudulent scheme, Valerie's carefully constructed composure visibly flickered, her eyes darting nervously towards Blackwood, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor running through her hands. Judge Grant, sharp and observant, simply nodded, making a swift, precise note on her pad. The temperature in the courtroom seemed to rise, a legal heat beginning to scorch Valerie's carefully constructed defense. Outside the courtroom, during a brief recess, Valerie cornered me in the crowded hallway, her voice a low, chilling whisper, barely audible above the bustling crowd. Her eyes, usually cool, burned with a furious intensity. "You won't win, Helen," she sneered, her voice laced with venomous contempt. "You're fighting a ghost for a pile of old rocks. I merely improved the collection, made it more accessible, more contemporary. Evelyn wouldn't have wanted it collecting dust in a vault, darling. She would have wanted it to circulate, to be appreciated by a modern eye." My voice, though trembling slightly with a mix of fear and anger, held firm. Evelyn cherished every story those jewels held, Valerie. Every piece was a unique chapter in history. You didn't improve anything. You desecrated her legacy for your own desperate gain, and you won't get away with it. Her face contorted with unadulterated fury, a mask of sophisticated malice finally slipping to reveal raw, ugly desperation. And she spun on her heel, disappearing into the throng, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and the acrid smell of impending doom. The ensuing weeks became a relentless crucible of depositions and discovery. Julian Blackwood, true to his reputation, employed every delaying tactic imaginable, challenging the chain of custody for Evelyn's meticulous records, attempting to cast doubt on Dr. Thorne's impeccable certifications and professional standing, and even trying to subpoena my personal financial history in a desperate, baseless attempt to find a countermotive or somehow frame me. But Mr. Caldwell systematically dismantled each maneuver with quiet efficiency. Dr. Thorne presented an exhaustive scientific report detailing the precise chemical composition and structural flaws of the replicas, proving their inauthenticity with irrefutable, cold data. Madame Dubois, in her testimony, painted a vivid, compelling picture of Evelyn's discerning eye and impeccable reputation within the international jewelry community, vouching for the authenticity of every piece Evelyn had acquired through her or known to be in her collection. The court also ordered Valerie to produce her complete financial records and the shocking reality of her astronomical debt, her string of spectacularly failed ventures, and her desperate need for immediate liquid assets became undeniably clear to the court. It was a damning picture of a woman drowning in financial ruin, whose fabricated veneer of success was crumbling by the day, exposing the true, malicious motive behind her artistic interpretation. The legal heat was now scorching Valerie, her elaborate defense burning away as surely as the genuine brilliance of Evelyn's jewels had been obscured by her fraudulent replicas. The momentum was shifting, the scales of justice slowly, inexorably tilting in our favor. As the trial progressed, the weight of the battle, both emotional and financial, began to feel crushing. The constant scrutiny, Valerie's venomous gaze that seemed to pierce me, and the detailed, agonizing recounting of Evelyn's precious collection being reduced to worthless fakes, often left me drained, exhausted, and questioning if the fight was truly worth the profound agony. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had the strength to see this through, if Evelyn would truly have wanted me to endure such a public, painful ordeal. But then I would recall Evelyn's quiet strength, her unwavering integrity, her deep love for history, and the unique stories each original jewel had whispered to me during those childhood summers, and my resolve would harden once more. This wasn't just about money. It was about Evelyn's legacy, her truth, her very soul. Mr. Caldwell, ever perceptive and attuned to my emotional state, suggested I spend time immersed in Evelyn's remaining archives. "Helen," he advised gently during a particularly grueling day of cross-examination, his voice a comforting balm, "the tangible jewels may be gone, for now, but Evelyn's knowledge, her meticulous record-keeping, her profound passion for provenance. That's the true treasure we need to unveil for the court. We need to make her love for these pieces palpable, undeniable, to demonstrate the sheer depth of her dedication. It will speak volumes about the quality of what Valerie destroyed. His words ignited a new urgency within me. Evelyn had kept a vast personal library, not just of standard art history books, but of obscure, handwritten auction catalogs, forgotten museum exhibition records, and most crucially, meticulously organized provenance files. I began sifting through them day and night, powered by endless cups of strong coffee and a fierce, almost obsessive determination. My fingers, stained with dust and ink, traced the faded script of centuries-old documents, and then I found them. Evelyn's jewel Bibles. These were not ordinary ledgers. They were immense, leather-bound volumes filled with Evelyn's elegant, precise handwritten notes, delicately pasted faded photographs of each jewel, intricate hand-drawn sketches of specific settings and unique identifying marks, and detailed historical timelines for every single piece in her collection. For each jewel, Evelyn had noted its previous owners, its fascinating journey through time, and often a small personal anecdote connecting it to history, a fleeting glimpse into the lives it had adorned. She even had tiny, almost microscopic engravings of her initials, M, subtly hidden within the settings of some of her most prized acquisitions, a secret signature, a testament to her unique touch and ownership. This was beyond meticulous. It was an act of profound dedication, a true scholarly devotion. One particular Bible, meticulously labeled Royal Lineage Collection, contained the complete provenance for the very jewels Valerie had replaced. Page after page, Evelyn had chronicled their journey through European royalty, wealthy merchant families, and eventually their careful acquisition by her. Each entry was dated, cross-referenced with sale records, and authenticated with certificates from reputable auction houses. Crucially, Evelyn had even included a series of highly magnified photographs taken by Dr. Thorne himself over the years, showcasing the unique, microscopic inclusions within the genuine gemstones, nature's own fingerprints. Impossible to replicate, undeniable proof of their natural origin and identity. These birthmarks were irrefutable proof. The original jewels existed, were authentic, and were unique. The fakes Valerie had left were utterly devoid of these natural markings. This was the undeniable truth, documented by Evelyn herself, that Valerie had tried so desperately and clumsily to obscure through her elaborate deception. As if fate itself was orchestrating the unveiling, tucked away in a small, hidden compartment within Evelyn's antique writing desk, a spot she always kept a fresh rose, I found a small, unmarked cassette tape. It was an old-fashioned audio cassette, a relic from another era. Evelyn, surprisingly, had an old, clunky cassette player in a drawer in the same desk. Curiosity piqued, my heart thrumming with anticipation. I pressed play. What emanated from the speakers brought a fresh wave of hot tears to my eyes, a sense of Evelyn's presence so strong it felt as though she were in the room with me. It was Evelyn's voice, clear and resonant, albeit with a slight tremor of age, a soft crackle in the background. "I'm recording this," she began, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "For future generations, should my collection ever be questioned or mishandled. Each jewel in my care is a piece of history, a living artifact. I have meticulously documented its journey, authenticated its every facet. And to anyone who believes they can reinterpret these stories, these tangible pieces of the past, I say this: you cannot erase history, you cannot forge beauty. The truth of authenticity, like a true diamond, will always reflect the light, no matter how much dust or deception tries to obscure it. She then proceeded to describe specific, intricate details of several of her most valuable pieces, including the precise locations of the hidden M engravings, providing a verbal key to their unique identity. It was as if she had known, foreseen this very moment. I immediately, almost reverently, sent the jewel Bibles, the magnified photographs of the inclusions, and the precious, irreplaceable cassette tape to Mr. Caldwell via armed courier. His phone call was immediate, his voice filled with a rare, exultant triumph that bordered on glee. "Helen," he exclaimed, his voice practically singing down the line, "this is it. This is beyond what we could have hoped for. Evelyn herself, from beyond the grave, is speaking the truth. Valerie's entire defense is about to shatter like cheap glass, just like those fakes she left behind." A renewed sense of fierce determination, a surge of adrenaline invigorated me. The jewels might be physically gone, but Evelyn's documented truth, her unassailable authentication, was more brilliant and enduring than any diamond. She was still teaching me, even in death, that true worth lies not in what can be stolen, but in what cannot be faked. Authenticity, integrity, and the deep, unwavering love for history. The courtroom, usually a bastion of hushed formality and procedural precision, crackled with an almost palpable tension as Mr. Caldwell prepared to present Evelyn's jewel Bibles and the compelling audio recording. Valerie, though outwardly composed, fidgeted subtly in her seat, her gaze fixed on the judge's bench. Julian Blackwood, her lawyer, sensing the impending doom, launched an immediate, furious objection, attempting to dismiss the evidence as inadmissible hearsay and the irrelevant ramblings of an elderly woman. But Judge Grant, her gaze piercing and unwavering, cut him off. "Mr. Blackwood," she stated, her voice resonating with an unyielding authority. Miss Mitchell's meticulous documentation, her extensive scholarship, and her clear, articulate audio statement provide invaluable, unique insight into the nature and authenticity of her collection, directly addressing the central question of provenance and intent in this case. They are not merely ramblings. They are the intellectual legacy of a respected expert. The court finds this evidence highly relevant and, indeed, crucial to understanding the facts at hand. Overruled. Valerie, seated beside Blackwood, had grown visibly pale, her confident, polished sheen fading under the harsh, unforgiving glare of the truth. Her usual dismissive smirk was replaced by a nervous, almost uncontrolled twitch at the corner of her mouth, a telltale sign of her unraveling composure. During the next phase, Mr. Caldwell systematically, methodically, and brilliantly dismantled Valerie's entire artistic interpretation defense. Dr. Aris Thorne took the stand, a beacon of scientific authority. He presented enlarged photographs of the authentic jewels' microscopic inclusions, their unique internal structures, comparing them side by side with equally magnified images of the flawless, synthetic structure of the fakes Valerie had left behind. These, Dr. Thorne testified, his voice calm but authoritative, pointing to a projected image of a diamond's intricate internal network, are geological fingerprints, Your Honor, unique to each genuine gemstone, formed over millions of years by nature itself. They are immutable, irrefutable proof of authenticity. The replicated pieces, he then indicated a sterile, featureless image of the fake, display none of these natural characteristics. Their composition points definitively to controlled, artificial mass production. They are fundamentally different entities. The visual evidence was undeniable, a stark scientific truth that left no room for doubt. Madame Elise Dubois followed Dr. Thorne. Her testimony, a masterful blend of art history, connoisseurship, and personal anecdote. She described Evelyn's unique eye, her meticulous authentication process, and her profound respect for provenance, painting a vivid picture of Evelyn's unassailable reputation within the international jewelry community. To suggest Evelyn Mitchell, Madame Dubois stated, her voice filled with a quiet, dignified indignation. A woman who dedicated her entire life to preserving and honoring the genuine history of these pieces would repurpose her invaluable collection into these cheap imitations is not only an insult to her artistic integrity, but a profound misunderstanding of the very soul of antique jewelry. These replicas are nothing short of a desecration, a barbarous act against history and beauty. Valerie, slumped in her chair, seemed to visibly shrink under the combined weight of the expert testimony, her elaborate charade crumbling into dust before the eyes of the court. The air of sophisticated disdain she once wore had been replaced by a thin film of sweat on her brow. Then came the moment of Valerie's cross-examination, a scene that felt ripped from a high-stakes courtroom drama where all pretenses were finally stripped away. Mr. Caldwell, usually methodical and composed, became a relentless, surgical force, peeling back layer after layer of Valerie's carefully constructed deception. He presented Valerie with her detailed financial records, obtained through court order, displaying the alarming progression of her colossal debts, her string of spectacularly failed ventures, and her desperate, last-ditch, high-interest loan applications just prior to Evelyn's passing. "Miss Hayes," Mr. Caldwell began, his voice low but sharp, his gaze unwavering. "Is it true that your last art consulting firm, Valerie's Visionary Ventures, was dissolved amid accusations of gross financial mismanagement, outright fraud, and unpaid client debts, leaving you with over $1 million in undeclared liabilities just weeks before your great-aunt Evelyn's passing?" Valerie stammered, her voice suddenly high-pitched and reedy. That's my private business. It's irrelevant. You're trying to smear my reputation." Judge Grant interjected, her voice firm. "Miss Hayes, answer the question. Your financial motivation is central to the plaintiff's claim of malicious intent and premeditation. The court requires a direct answer." Valerie, cornered, grudgingly, miserably admitted to the bankruptcy, the words catching in her throat like jagged shards of glass. Mr. Caldwell then played Evelyn's audio recording. The courtroom fell utterly silent as Evelyn's clear, resonant voice filled the room, describing the intricate engravings she had subtly placed on her most treasured pieces, and the immutable nature of authenticity in true jewels. "The truth will always reflect the light," Evelyn's voice concluded, a gentle but powerful pronouncement from beyond the grave. As Evelyn's voice faded, Mr. Caldwell's voice boomed, sharp and accusatory, cutting through the silence. "Miss Hayes," he demanded, his gaze locked on Valerie, "did you replace Evelyn Mitchell's precious, authenticated jewels with these crudely made replicas for your own desperate financial gain? Was your artistic interpretation merely a flimsy, transparent veil for grand theft and blatant fraud?" Valerie finally shattered. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled, revealing the raw, ugly desperation beneath, a desperate animal cornered with no escape. She burst into a torrent of angry, tearful accusations, her voice cracking, her words tumbling out in a desperate, uncontrollable flood. "She owed me. Evelyn owed me. She always favored Helen, always. I needed the money. Those old jewels were just gathering dust, anyway. I made them new, relevant. I was making them more accessible to the modern art market. It was an act of artistic genius. Her outburst confirmed everything: the deep-seated jealousy, the crippling financial despair, and the utter disregard for Evelyn's legacy beyond its crude monetary value. The courtroom was silent, save for Valerie's ragged breathing and occasional, gasping sobs. Her elaborate defense had not just dulled, it had completely shattered, exposing the stark, brutal truth of her malicious fraud. The karmic revenge, swift and public, had begun to cast its unforgiving light on Valerie's ruined reputation. Her artistic interpretation was now revealed as nothing but a pathetic lie. Judge Grant's verdict was swift and decisive, delivered with a gravitas that befitted the magnitude of Valerie's crime. The judgment against Valerie was staggering: a colossal sum covering the full appraised value of the original collection, the extensive costs incurred for forensic analysis of the fakes, and all legal fees. It was a vindication that resonated beyond the confines of the courtroom. A public declaration of Evelyn's artistic integrity and Valerie's profound, criminal betrayal. Valerie, defeated and disgraced, was ordered to pay a debt that would undoubtedly force her into immediate and inescapable bankruptcy. A bitter taste of the karmic justice she had so recklessly invited upon herself. Julian Blackwood, visibly shaken by his client's spectacular collapse, simply offered a perfunctory, mumbled apology to the court, his face pale, his client too stunned by the crushing weight of her reality to speak. The public exposure of her colossal financial ruin and her deliberate act of artistic vandalism had already begun to circulate, amplified by the media frenzy surrounding the high-profile case, painting her not as the shrewd businesswoman she aspired to be, but as a desperate, destructive thief, a fraudster whose veneer of sophistication had been irrevocably peeled away. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of media attention. Reporters swarmed outside the courthouse, eager for sound bites and dramatic headlines about the jewel swap scandal and the case of the counterfeit cousin. But I politely declined most interviews, choosing instead to focus on the quiet, yet profound, task of recasting Evelyn's legacy. The physical jewels were still gone, undoubtedly residing somewhere in the murky depths of the black market, likely already dispersed and rebranded. But Evelyn's knowledge, her meticulous provenance, and her very spirit of connoisseurship remained, with Mr. Caldwell guiding the legal recovery efforts, and with the invaluable, tireless help of Dr. Thorne and Madame Dubois. We devised a revolutionary plan for a digital and conceptual exhibition of Evelyn's entire collection. We couldn't recover the physical pieces, but we could, with meticulous detail, bring their stories and Evelyn's discerning eye to life for a wider audience. We embarked on creating an immersive digital display, painstakingly recreating each original jewel using Evelyn's jewel Bibles, the magnified photographs of the unique inclusions within the genuine gemstones, and Madame Dubois' unparalleled, vivid descriptions. Dr. Thorne contributed clear, concise, scientific explanations of the gemstones' compositions and the irrefutable evidence of the fakes, while Mr. Caldwell provided the gripping legal narrative of how authenticity ultimately triumphed over fraud. It was a painstaking, often emotional process, but each digital rendering, each carefully curated historical note, each meticulously rendered detail felt like an act of defiant creation against Valerie's destruction. It was our way of proving that truth, like Evelyn's original jewels, possessed an inherent brilliance that could not be dulled by lies. Valerie, meanwhile, faced the full, brutal, and unyielding consequences of her actions. Her remaining assets, meager as they were seized by court order. her public image utterly annihilated, her name now synonymous with deceit. Creditors, emboldened by the civil judgment and the accompanying criminal investigation that was now firmly underway, charges of grand larceny and fraud were actively being pursued, intensified their pursuits with merciless efficiency. Her carefully cultivated social circle, once so vital to her self-image, built on appearances and borrowed money, evaporated overnight. I heard snippets of news through mutual acquaintances. She had been forced to sell her lavish penthouse at a fraction of its worth. Her luxury car had been repossessed, and she was seen working menial, low-paying jobs. Her once glittering life reduced to a miserable, humiliating shadow of its former self. There was no joy in witnessing her suffering, no triumphant glee, only a quiet, somber recognition of the immutable principle of cause and effect. It was a heavy form of karmic retribution, unfolding for the world to see, a stark, painful contrast to Evelyn's quiet, enduring legacy. Valerie's artistic interpretation had only painted her own future in bleak, unforgiving shades. One quiet afternoon, months after the verdict, as I organized Evelyn's vast library, cataloging her books and papers, a small, unmarked wooden box fell from a high shelf, dislodged by a stray elbow. Inside, carefully wrapped in a silk scarf, was a small, unassuming silver locket. It wasn't part of the famous collection. It was a simple, everyday piece Evelyn had always worn close to her heart, a piece I'd seen her absent-mindedly fiddle with countless times. As I opened it, its tiny hinge creaking softly, a microscopic, almost invisible engraving on the inside surface caught the light. M. True worth endures. It was a message Evelyn had left for me, a final teaching about enduring value that transcended material possession. This small locket, perhaps overlooked by Valerie in her hurried, greedy search for grander treasures, was a tangible piece of Evelyn's heart, a symbol of hope and an affirmation that some things, some legacies, truly are meant to endure, defying even the most malicious acts of destruction. It was a beacon of true worth, found not in price tags, but in the enduring spirit of authenticity, integrity, and love. It was Evelyn's final, most poignant lesson. 6 months have passed since the final judgment, and Evelyn's house, once a silent sentinel of her magnificent collection, has transformed into a vibrant, bustling center for antique jewelry education and historical preservation. The digital exhibition of her conceptually recovered collection is a triumph, drawing students, burgeoning collectors, and seasoned enthusiasts eager to learn about Evelyn's discerning eye and the enduring power of true provenance. The physical vault, now empty of fakes, holds interactive displays, allowing visitors to explore the stories of the jewels that once resided there, their histories preserved even in their physical absence. The small silver locket, Evelyn's personal talisman, now rests on a velvet cushion in a prominent, specially lit display case. Its simple elegance, a powerful counterpoint to the dazzling digital projections. A constant, humble reminder that true worth is found in genuine connection, not superficial sparkle. The financial aftermath of the lawsuit, while a clear victory, was not without its own complexities. The legal fees, though largely covered by Evelyn's foresight and her dedicated legal fund, required careful management, and I've taken on additional work, consulting for museums and private collectors on provenance research, leveraging the extensive knowledge I gained throughout this arduous ordeal. Mr. Caldwell, who proved to be not just a lawyer, but a steadfast friend and invaluable mentor, frequently visits the house, his quiet pride in Evelyn's legacy almost palpable as he watches students pore over the digital displays. His unwavering belief in me and in the immutable power of truth was a constant source of strength during the darkest days. Emotionally, the journey has been profoundly transformative. The initial shock, the searing rage, and the deep grief have softened into a quiet, resilient strength. I continued with the therapy I began during the trial, processing not just Valerie's specific betrayal, but the deeper complexities of family expectations, inherited trauma, and the insidious nature of envy. I've learned, through this painful crucible, that not all relationships, even those within one's own family, are built on foundations of trust and love, and that sometimes true family is forged in the fires of shared values and mutual respect, not merely by blood. I have established firm boundaries, not just with Valerie, but with other distant relatives who viewed Evelyn's passing as an opportunity for personal gain. Valerie has indeed faded into obscurity, her reputation in tatters, facing the stark reality of her choices. I hear whispers she is working menial jobs to pay off her staggering debts, her once glittering life reduced to a miserable shadow of its former self. There is no joy in her suffering, only a somber understanding of the inevitable consequences of her own destructive actions, a harsh reflection of the karmic justice she orchestrated for herself. I've also begun to lead workshops at Evelyn's house, teaching aspiring jewelers, collectors, and enthusiasts about the profound difference between imitation and authenticity, between fleeting price and true, enduring worth. I share Evelyn's stories, her meticulous methods, and the hard-won lessons I learned through the painful experience of the lawsuit. It's a way of honoring Evelyn, not just as a collector, but as a teacher whose legacy now extends far beyond her personal collection, touching new lives and fostering a new generation of custodians of history. The house, once a silent repository of hidden treasures, then a crime scene of devastating betrayal, has now become a vibrant hub of learning and preservation, its walls echoing with new stories of discernment, integrity, and the enduring brilliance of truth. The community, aware of the legal battle and Evelyn's unique story, has embraced this new purpose, celebrating the triumph of authenticity over deceit. Sitting in Evelyn's study now, surrounded by her beloved books and the quiet hum of the digital displays, I often reflect on her wisdom, particularly her implicit understanding that true worth cannot be faked, cannot be stolen, and will always, eventually, shine through. Even when obscured by the most malicious of acts, Valerie may have temporarily obscured the brilliance of Evelyn's jewels, but in doing so, she inadvertently illuminated a far greater truth: the unassailable value of integrity, of meticulous dedication, and of a legacy built on genuine, enduring passion. Evelyn taught me that true inheritance isn't just what's left behind, but the profound truth you choose to carry forward, to protect, and to share with the world. Have you ever experienced a situation where you had to fight for the truth of something precious, or where a hidden deception in your own life came to light? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences can illuminate and help others facing similar battles. And if this story of Evelyn's enduring legacy and the brilliance of authenticity touched something in you, please hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that while fakes may glitter, true worth will always reflect the purest light. Thank you for listening. And remember, inheritance isn't just what's left to you, but the enduring truth you choose to carry forward.